It's just a question of when things are scheduled. I mean, this story collection that just came out now is coming out a month before the big story collection is coming out in the United States, simply because that's when Ravis decided they wanted to do it and the Americans decided they wanted to do it. No, my father and I didn't get along, and so if he said go right, I went left. And only when I was a late teenager did I decide that I wanted to do what he wanted to do. But it was almost like I was angry about it because I didn't want to do what he did. It's not a question that I was teaching at the time, and I wanted to come overseas to teach in Europe, and it was just a question of jobs. And then after I had been in Vienna about 6 months, I thought, you know, this is a good place. I think at home is where you're most comfortable, and I've always been comfortable in Vienna. I went back to America in the middle 90s to Hollywood to write films, and I was there almost 2 years. And there just came a point where I said, I don't want to do this anymore, and I went back to Vienna. I've done a lot of script work, but in English it's called script doctoring, which means someone will write a script and then 5 people will be called in to work on the dialogue or the scenes or whatever. And I never take credit for this stuff because it's not my script. It's like a house painter's called in to paint that wall. You didn't paint the whole house, you painted the wall. I mean, they pay you a lot of money, but you're not doing much work. You're just, for example, I was once called in to make a woman talk more like a woman because people like my dialogue and they like the way that I have women talk. And so I just, you know, had her talking better, and that was my job. Why would I take credit for that? It happens all the time, but what happens is this: someone will buy the rights to the book, and then they go to a movie studio, and the movie studio has layers of important people. And the person will bring the book to the person at the bottom, and they go, yes, 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 no, because it's too strange. And it's a joke with me, because the fact that my books have always reached about the middle point when some associate vice president will say, it's too strange, we can't do it. Well, my favorite dog tragically died very young. He was about 4 and he had cancer. And I've always liked dogs, but his loss was such a big thing for me that I didn't get another dog for 2 years, just because it was like my best friend had died. And the reason why I got another dog actually just recently was because a friend of mine called and said, there's a dog in the animal shelter, they're going to kill it tomorrow. You love this dog, come and get it. And so that's the dog that I now have. It's not a bull terrier, it's a mixed breed, but she's very sweet. I didn't read, when I was a kid I didn't read at all until I was about 15. People are always saying to me, oh, you wrote Land of Laughs and Sleeping in Flame, you must have read fairy tales like crazy when you were a kid. I didn't read anything as a kid. I got in fights. That was my entertainment. Fairy tales are okay, but they're not that important to me. I think Lem's work is interesting because it achieves 2 things. On the one hand, it's popular literature. It's available. You can read it easily, but if you allow yourself to, it can be very profound. You know, you put a Lem book down there, like 6 thoughts going around in your mind, none of which have any answers to them, but that's the fun of reading these things, because you go, well, what if this and what if that and all of that. And I think that's one of the greatest positive aspects of reading, is it stays with you and it stays alive in your brain as you try to think about characters or situations or whatever. And it's like a living presence inside you. The best books you've ever read continue to live in you forever. people are always disappointed when they ask me that, because I always say, my dreams are like, I dream that I walk into the kitchen and make a sandwich. You know, and they say, well, what about the flying dogs and the talking children? I say, I write that, but my dreams are like, I go and buy a sweater, the end, and then I wake up. The people who know me very well say that I'm a combination of Harry Radcliffe from the Dog Museum and Franny McCabe from The Wooden Sea, the two of them combined. Because they're both very blunt, you know, they'll tell you the truth, and because they're funny, and because they work hard at what they do. They work hard to do a good job at what they do. I always used to tell my students, give a book a 50-page test. It can be Ulysses, it can be Moby Dick, it can be the Bible, it can be Midnight, whatever those vampire books are. If you like it, after 50 pages, continue. If you don't like it, put it down and read something else. There's nothing worse in the world than, you know, when you're in school and they say you have to read this book and you read 30 pages and you hate it, and then for the next 200 pages you're half asleep. And I say the same thing about my own books. If you don't like what I write after 50 pages, put it down and read something else. And so in the sense, when you read a good book, it is like a trip, because you've given up your reality and you get deeper and deeper and deeper into the reality of the book that you're reading, whether it be my books or vampire books or whatever. And the best books, when you come to the end of it, you almost have to kind of wake up and go back to your own world. You know, you're so closely connected to the people and the situations in that book that you almost have given up your life to take on that life, and it's almost like, you know, somebody slaps you awake. It's like, oh yeah, here I am in bed, and it's 3 in the morning and I have an examination tomorrow morning. You know, those are the best books. If they're getting criticism, pay very close attention to criticism. Sometimes you'll get a rejection, and there'll be an editor who say, the reason why we don't want this book is because of this. Publishers are in the business to make money. They're not in the business to be your friends. So if you're getting a letter from a publisher telling you, these are the problems of this book, don't go, they don't know what they're talking about. I know what I'm talking about. Pay attention to what they say, because they're professionals. If you're just getting what in English is called a form rejection, you know, thank you, but we don't want your book, then you either have to decide, put that book down and write another one, or continue giving that book in, but know that the chances of it being taken are small. And the thing is, I always say to people, if you want to be a writer, the only criteria for really wanting to be a writer is you like the process of writing. The fact that you get published is something else. But I like to sit down every day and write. So in that sense, that's my pleasure, that's my reward. But if you only write because you want to be Stephen King or you want $1 million, you're an idiot. You should be doing something that you like, even if it's making pizza. You should be doing something that you like to do every day. And if that's writing, then the fact that you get published or you don't get published is secondary. What's primary is the fact, oh boy, I get to sit down and do what I like to do. Cooking, gardening, writing, walking dogs. That's the most important thing. Everybody, I'm glad to be here, and there were good questions, and thank you for taking the time to think them up.